publicize this document, listen to the views and the small amendments that internally within the pro-BBI group were talking about. Let us improve before, but after publication, it ends there. Nothing can change. I think that is what is critical. Yeah. Now, as Senate comes to vote, you will hear people raising preliminary objections and raising issues around this document, saying this document 95% is good, but on this particular one is a problem. Therefore, you weigh your conscience and local political interest, and you say, I will vote, but they have given fodder for conversation and for other people outside Parliament to pick it up and talk about it. Now, the question of numbers of the constituency, and this is where the problem is, really. If truly Raila was involved, if truly Kalonzo was involved in this conversation, and knowing truly well that population is not the only quota in terms of delineation of the constituencies, could they not have argued for more constituencies to go to Siaya, to go to Kitui, to go to the areas that believe they are strongholds? How do you get into a negotiating table and you find that one partner runs away with 35, 50% of what is on the table, you get scrums? And that is where the problem is. And when you listen to Orengo's and Otiende's argument, is that here there was no adequate negotiation on this matter. Even though everything else on the BBI is good, but on this 70, we need to relook at it afresh. Yeah. Now, these sweeteners that have been given specifically to entice the restless backyard, that which President Uhuru comes from, would have been okay if, for example, IEBC as a neutral body was the one that was coming out and specifically telling Kenyans that, yes, there's a need to bring 50 constituencies or 40 new constituencies, and this is the distribution given the 5 parameters provided for in Section 89 of our Constitution. It is IEBC role to give us that scientific explanation. This 70 appear to like a rabbit pulled from a hat. Nobody can explain what they are. Apart from this thing, we have the total population of Kenya divided by 130, okay, which is the minimum number. We find we need 360 constituencies. Therefore, this 70 constituency will go to 1, 2, without any. It's only one parameter that has been used. You have not looked at the communication. You've not looked at infrastructure. You've not looked at historical. How did we even get here? To find a constituency, what Mheshimiwa Barua says in Kirinyaga, that has 169, but has 1 MP, and Dr. Odera's constituency has 69,000 and has 1 MP. Okay. Nobody has come out scientifically to explain it, apart from throwing the numbers thing. And that, again, is where the problem is. In any democracy, majority will have their way, but the minority will have their say. It is now that we are exercising that. And if it is not handled well, a lot of disenfranchised will come through. People will start looking at our leaders from a very different lens. People will start questioning Raila's ability to negotiate that which helps him. People will ask Kalonzo's ability or inability thereof to negotiate that which is good for him. How does he get 4 and somebody is getting 35? I think that is the political discourse that must be handled and handled well.
Okay, Dr. Rinjogu, I'll let you defend your case. Is it just about the population? Because according to other panelists, the parameters for reviews encompass a couple of things which might have not been put into consideration when it comes to the 70 new constituencies. Your take?
It is not just about population alone. I agree that it's not just about population. There are other factors, like the space itself, because constituencies like North Hall is as big as Central Province, it's very sparse. But also you also ask yourself is can you have an open conversation? When you say that these people are spread out in various parts of that large constituency, how do they live? They live in villages. They live together. So if you want to serve 1,000 people from North Hall, for example, you can serve them from one point. So the dispersal is already mitigated in one way or the other. So the space will have its own weight. The level of development, that is poverty index. But what I'm putting here is that the issue of numbers has been downplayed, completely downplayed. When you talk about the issues in rural constituencies in Kenya, because we all have been MPs or aspiring MPs on this panel here, most people their biggest interest these people have is educating their children, or our children. What they want is get bursaries, for example. If you don't have hard cash to give bursaries, you're not be able to empower your people to go to get the best education possible or to have access to education.
All right.
The other issue I would like to put across is that I come from central Kenya. I mean the peripheries of central Kenya. Because when you talk about Mount Kenya, Kirinyaga is really not mainstream. We are talking about Kiambu, Murang'a, and Nyeri.
Okay.
Those are the mainstream Kikuyu counties. As Kirinyaga, Embu, and Meru, we are in another level, and that's a debate for another day, and I hope time will come and create for that position. So people from Mount Kenya, from outside Mount Kenya, they think that the situation in Kirinyaga is as rosy as in other mainstream central Kenya population. They don't know that the situation in Mount Kenya, in Kirinyaga, for example, is very close to what is happening in Mwingi. And that is why we as members of parliament, the space who are sitting, you should benchmark with other constituents so I can know exactly what happens. When I go to Busia, when I go to Kakamega, I see the same problems I see in Geshogo. So my argument is, as much as we are going to have other factors, let us have individuals, the numbers, carrying the highest and very heavy weight, because we are talking about empowering the person. Finally, in terms of this issue of Senate, if you allow, I expect Lusaka to make the same pronouncement as Muturi. You cannot open up that document. I expect Akina Mutura Kironzo and James Orengo to raise objections, but still vote yes. Because this is an issue of money or the box. You either take the money or take the box. This is a popular initiative, and these two gentlemen, Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, through their rights as Kenyan citizens, have brought us proposals. And as in Mount Kenya, we have been told that from our view, informed position, from myself as Uhuru Kenyatta and with my brother, Raila Odinga, we have seen it wise to give you that 5 constituency. We have no choice of saying 134, that's 6. So the question is, do you say no or do you say yes?
Okay.
We say yes. And that will see some people who are members of parliament from Mount Kenya, who are keen supporters of the deputy president, are saying yes. Because this is an issue of what is innate, is for me. If I've got a constituency, I say yes. The issue of 2022 will come later. Finally, I'd like to say that from now up to 2022, we are going to have a situation of dynamic equilibrium. We are going to have William Ruto pushing on with his people, MPs, up to December 2021. We are going to have Kalonzo doing the same, Uhuru doing the same. Because the biggest value you have for the sitting members of parliament and senators is their vote in parliament. But when you go beyond December, these people, Kalonzo, Uhuru, Raila, they are seasoned politicians. I was in parliament. They know that the sitting MPs may not be as popular as they were in 2017. They know that even if they are popular, they cannot carry, most of them not carry more than 50% of the population. So they need to redesign themselves, to rebrand themselves, so they can get a bigger share of government in 2022. Finally, about Raila Odinga, yes, people from his backyard are saying no because of 35, because the backyard was given few. That's a fact. So if Raila was short-charged and disappointed the documents, Joe Biden says that Raila has got the final say on this thing, let the people of Nyanza and other regions not victimize people of Central Kenya for being offered those constituencies which they deserve. So if Kalonzo was short-charged, it's up to him. Mudavadi is up to him. Raila is up to him. His people, their people are still following them. So if it's a popular initiative, and the way Mr. Jonet Mohammed has been saying here, it is like this decision of what we get was by the leadership. There was no consultation, adequate consultation at the grassroots level. And that is why yesterday's headline was, it is either our way or the highway. When you are given those two options, what do you take? You take what is good for you.
Okay.
Yes.
Simple. Shape up or ship out.
Out, yeah.
That seems to be the message. Athodera, are you victimizing in any way, or it's a bigger issue apart from underrepresentation when it comes to these 17 new constituencies?
Not at all, Jesse, not at all. I mean, if we are referring to the Constitution, the provisions of the Constitution does not victimize people, and fidelity to the Constitution cannot surely be a route to victimize anybody. And Njogu Barua comes from central Kenya, and I can understand his argument. If he did not say what he's saying, the people of Gishugu will not vote for him. So I quite understand his position. On the other hand, it's not about victimization. I think we need to debate this issue soberly as a national issue. And it's not just it's not an isolated issue. It is within the whole theme of equity, fairness, and building a national ethic where everybody everywhere feels that whilst they may not get what they want, they have been treated fairly anyway. And I think if we get to that position, we will have a nation that is united, we will have a nation devoid of suspicion, and we will have a nation where people are willing to work together and commit. And if Njogu Barua needed an illustration of what impact geography can have, it is the vaccines. The question you asked earlier, why is it that it is Turkana, Wajir, Mandera, Lamu, and other counties with poor infrastructure? And I'm sure if you did a statistic of the counties where the population is concentrated together vis-a-vis those where there is big dispersal of the population, poor infrastructure, you will find that getting the vaccine to people where the dispersal of the population is high is much more difficult, much more expensive, takes more time. And therefore, the argument about geography is not an idle argument. It's about the impact on service delivery, and I keep saying that. Take an example of Kiambu has just about 2,500 square kilometers in terms of area. Wajir has 56,000 square kilometers. Even if they were to live in settlements, if you are the governor of Wajir and you wanted to visit each one of your people, at least to every area, it may take you years. Yet, if you are the governor of Kiambu, you can go around the county in 2 days or 3. And this is not about victimization. This is not about picking on a community or a group. It is about looking at the totality of the challenge we face as a country, the opportunity we face as a country, and to find a method that allocates resources in a way that is fair, equitable, and tries to address the service delivery challenges. If we don't do that, we will be arguing and having dissatisfaction and anger across the country until a time when the people of Kenya begin to feel that they are being treated fairly. If you want me to comment on what's going on in Parliament?
Sure.
On the BBI?
Yeah.
I think that, I expect that Senate will pass the BBI bill. The argument that Senator Orengo made, one of the arguments he made in Senate was, look, I don't believe this has been done the right way for 2 reasons. One, it doesn't seem that all the factors in Article 89, 5 to 7 were taken into account. Number 2, it was not done by IEBC. It is IEBC and only IEBC that the Constitution gives the mandate to do that, to delimit constituencies, to redraw boundaries if they wish, to eliminate constituencies if they wish. They're the only ones with that mandate. But Senator Orengo went on to say that, listen, this has no grounding in law. It is wrong. However, let us pass the bill and deal with this later. Maybe that's the way to look at it. As a seasoned lawyer, I'm sure he knows what can happen. And even before that, the courts will have their say, because this matter is in a court of law. The courts will have their say on this matter. All I hope will happen then, as we go towards referendum, which I think it will happen, is I hope that for purposes of ensuring that in future ordinary wananchi, local leaders can hold their elected leaders accountable for use of resources, I hope that there will be sufficient objective civic education across the country. I know these are COVID days, but using technology, using all manner of avenues available, we should educate Kenyans sufficiently so that they understand what this means in terms of what they should expect from their national government, from their county government, from their leaders, and in that way, they can understand. And I can tell you, Jesse, even up to now, about 9 years after devolution started, there are very many Kenyans who do not clearly know the difference between what the county is responsible for, which road the county should be taking care of, and which role the national government should be taking care of. Okay. So we should get over that hurdle, educate people. The sad part of this is a lot of people who support one side or the other usually position their campaign as civic education. And I'm not sure that we have clear, definite policed rules for civic education, because you find people being headed into a certain direction, positioned as civic education, yet it's essentially campaign. And I'm sure there's many organizations in Kenya which have an interest in this matter, which are going to go out and campaign under the guise of civic education. If you consider that, then it's important that the government actually steps in and crafts a civic education program, widespread, a transparent program that everybody can see, everybody can access, and everybody can spread if they can.
Okay, that's interesting. Civic education is the next big route to take. Let's see how it transpires in the midst of the campaigns. But Joseph Kioko, as we're speaking about campaigns and civic education, I think the role of political parties and their interest in the BBI will definitely play a central role. Talk to us about the space for dissenting views in these political parties. Because as we've seen on the floor of the House, Siaya Senator James Orengo had a couple of issues to do with the 70 new constituencies, Rarieda Member of Parliament, and we saw the clapback that followed one of them being ejected from the PAC committee. What say you about the democratic space in these parties?
You know, earlier on, I think it must have been Dr. had said that as we clamored for the national expansion of democratic space, the introduction of multipartyism, and a very healthy national discourse on divergent political issues, somehow political parties were left behind. And even with the creation of the Political Parties Fund, so that to insulate political parties from the whims of party leaders or the financiers of the party. That is why the Political Parties Act was created, so that political parties could be funded from the exchequer. That way it ensured a longevity of the party over and above certain individuals. However, of late, and we've seen it happening in Jubilee, that anybody who expresses a contra-opinion from a position stated, which has been brought out first without consultation through rank and file. So somebody wakes up and says, this is the party position. And then you are asked, how did you get to this party position? Did you exhaust all internal mechanism of conversation and public discourse on this thing, so that we all have an idea of when we go out, how can we defend this particular position? It started in Jubilee, and it is now gaining currency within ODM, that if you do not agree with Raila, then you are pro-Ruto, because that's how this thing has been canvassed. The only difference is that they cannot say Orengo is pro-Ruto. That's why you find many people are hiding under Orengo's shadow to come out and voice contra-opinion to the BBI, because they'll say, even Orengo disagrees with this document at a particular time. And you cannot say that when Orengo disagrees, he is supporting Ruto. So now, political parties need to allow for the discourse. And you know, the reason that this discontent happens is because the last time ODM had their parliamentary group, because they do have regular conversations, and the document that they said needed to go to the counties is not this document that has come out as it is today. There were errors, and everybody saw it, albeit typographical errors. So right now, people within ODM are raising and say, guys, let us talk. Let us not allow ourselves to be taken to the slaughterhouse and be carved out in areas that we never thought should be carved out. That's a very healthy conversation. Now, when somebody stands up and says we are like cows, you know, that's really degrading the political space for conversation. It really negates the entirety of the conversation about multipartyism democracy, because multipartyism is just based on contra-opinions. Thesis, antithesis, and you bring the very best that the country can enjoy. Now, as you move forward in the conversation within the BBI and the objections that will come out and the role of civic education, I think the last 2 weeks, because of a keen followership by members watching what was happening on the floor of the House, a lot of civic education has happened. We can call it like that, even though that's not the full breadth of it. People have listened keenly to their leaders articulating positions about this BBI, and it will form basis of conversation moving forward. So let us allow discourse to occur.
Okay.
Let it not be that the moment you say something against a party leader, it means you are inherently moving to the other side of the debate. Remember, the people who opposed the 2010 Katiba today are at the center of government. Ruto opposed the 2010, and they went on and formed a coalition with Uhuru Kenyatta, who was supporting the Katiba of 2010, and they formed government. So the outcomes of the referendum really might not reflect the true will of the 2022 election. It is still early. Let us listen to divergent views so that as a country, we get that which is very best from this process.
Okay, Daktari, as we talk about divergent views on the floor of the House, many, or at least some quarters, didn't expect the likes of Bahati, Member of Parliament, the Msambweni, Member of Parliament, to vote in the manner they did, bearing in mind their close link with Deputy President William Ruto, who, as a matter of fact, hasn't given his support or rejection for the BBI. Just mentioned it's not a priority. Were you surprised in any way, or you read local political interest and self-preservation in such moves?
I think to a large extent I was not surprised, because those voting patterns were defined by local politics, and people are trying to project their positions in 2022. If I vote no, how does it affect my chances in 2022? If I vote yes, how does it affect my position in 2022? Secondly, the Deputy President has become the center of this discussion, although he's not very active, and it's because he's a serious stakeholder in this succession battle.
Yeah.
And I think these guys have been discussing, because he has said that he doesn't have a yes or no position on the BBI. I think there could have been some sort of liberty so that you can preserve the union, that is the unity of the Tanga team, and also preserve the chances of people, the individuals, of being re-elected. So I think it's a mix of the two. The other thing is that if this in the BBI 1, at the BBI 1 level, the both sides of yes and no had very hardline positions.
Yeah.
As we move towards BBI 2 and BBI 3, where we are now, people are getting more closer to each other. Because I think at BBI 1, it was hardline position. People are coming to understand what's good for them in that document, and they are starting to engage with each other. So I think people, the positions are softening, and we expect, if you have to go to the referendum, there could be a surprise on the outcome, because people will be more free to vote based on their concerns, because there's no leader of the no side of the campaign.
Okay, and what do you envision for those members of parliament who, in one way or the other, might be in opposition for the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020, and they hail from the central Kenya region, bearing in mind the bag of goodies that seems to be aligned for this particular region? What do you envision for them?
What I envision is that in central Kenya, either you vote yes or vote no, there will be a campaign structured to criminalize you for your position, as long as you are sitting member of parliament or a sitting senator. For example, in my county, during the vote, our women rep voted no. And there's a lot of attack on her, because people are now saying, okay, Kirinyaga is getting an extra constituency. Why is she voting no? Does she say that you don't deserve this? So local interests come in. But they are not saying that they are moving from their preferred candidates of 2022. Don't forget there is competition at the rural level, which is also equally important.
Okay.
And in terms of, there's another issue which has been coming out in central Kenya. Who is going to be the next kingpin after Uhuru Kenyatta? Some people are saying there is no direct kingpin. But I want to assure you that the people, maybe you don't need kingpins right now, But people will be acceptable across the board will emerge. And that's why Kaboko said that we are there. I don't know what he meant by we are here, but we are there.
Yes.
I may be one of them who is being considered for that position. So we are okay. And BBI, I think, because of the goodies which my colleagues have put very clearly, and I agree with them. The goodies given to Mount Kenya may most likely will tilt the region into voting yes. And Uhuru Kenyatta, being from central Kenya, would not have anticipated him losing a vote in his own backyard, because that we mean is political.
All right. Okay, so it seems to be a sweetener in one way or the other. Fodera, I'll get your take right after we play this particular story in terms of which way DP, because it was expected to be a showdown in the National Assembly as members of Parliament voted for the BBI bill, but it turned out to be an anti-climax one way or the other for Deputy President William Ruto's camp, with only 83 members of Parliament voting down the bill. The question is Deputy President William Ruto's route to State House becoming a slippery slope as 2022 draws nearer? Take a look.
In February 2021, Deputy President William Ruto hosted what was reported to be more than 140 members of Parliament at his current residence. One of the meetings that seemed to show his might in numbers cutting across the country. However, on Thursday at the National Assembly during the BBI vote, the numbers deserted him. His side marshalling only 83 votes against 235 who voted in favor of the BBI bill during the second reading.
There was no betrayal. The real contest is coming, and there was no contest there. And you cannot betray a cause and go to a no cause, because when you say that they have betrayed Deputy President William Ruto to go and support who is the candidate on the other side?
As a team, had no common position that was discussed and agreed on. What we did agree on is that everybody would vote according to their conscience and what their local politics informed them.
As Ruto's side sought to detach the outcome of the vote in the National Assembly from the 2022 politics, political commentators argued that the outcome should serve as a wake-up call to the DP in his race to State House.
The optics were good when he projected as having 140 MPs. Unfortunately, as I've said, these MPs are on hire. And as we near 2022, so does the hire period decrease. So it is a realization that he already knew, in my view. He's not a foolish politician. What I do not know is what he is planning to do in terms of seeking a tribal chief from another party. Without another tribal chief, he'll remain alone in the Rift Valley and only bargain as the tribal chief of the Rift Valley. Simple and plain.
The change of tune by a section of so-called die-hard Ruto allies, perhaps a clear indication that they could easily switch camps in favor of personal and regional interests. Political pundits arguing that Deputy President William Ruto should go back to the drawing board.
His salvation is not in the 83 members of Parliament who voted no in Parliament. His salvation is how he may persuade another tribe to join him. Short of another tribe, he can forget about his ambitions, because the Kimani Ngunjiris, the K2 Warigurus, and all the others will troop back home when the hour of reckoning arrives.
Ruto and his allies have been questioning the timing and priority given to the clamor to amend the constitution at the time the nation is grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic. Observers opining that should the referendum pass, he stands to be a beneficiary of the proposals in the BBI bill.
We were there merely not to stop anything. We were there to put it on record that we don't think BBI is a priority. And it was important that we do so for posterity, so that it is in the hands and is in the records of this country that there are few people who are courageous enough, who are principled enough to say that any process that is not a priority should not be allowed to take place.
Either way, Honorable William Ruto stands to gain. If this referendum goes through and many slots are created as is suggested in this bill, Honorable William Ruto will have enough slices of the cake to give out. And since the winner of any election in this country will be that one who will bring together the greatest coalition of tribes, William Ruto will have enough slices for each tribal kingpin.
Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
Well, according to DP's men, no common position was agreed on. Everyone voted according to their conscience. But there's those who prescribe to the school of thought that it was a resounding defeat in Parliament for the Deputy President's camp on this BBI bill. And, I mean, let's take a look at the way forward. Arthur Odera, what do you read of this? And perhaps, as we anticipate the vote in the Senate, will the colleagues follow the same path?
The voting in the Senate as the voting in the National Assembly will illustrate one more, or raise the important question, Jesse, whether at all the political parties we have in Kenya are grounded in an ideology of some sort. If they profess an ideology or did at some point during their inception, does that ideology guide action within those parties? And I think the overwhelming answer is no. That people vote based on the interest of the time, based on regional interest or local interest, or based on what they call conscience, which is really voting with one eye on next year's re-election bid or next year's attempt to win a seat or another. Coming back to this voting that happened in the National Assembly, my hunch is we are reading too much into it. Okay. To think or to say that the Deputy President suffered a humiliating defeat, I think does not reflect anything that he purposed. Because, you see, the Deputy President, from mid-2018, his team went ballistic against BBI. They demonized the BBI. They demonized any outputs that might have been created by the BBI into 2019 and into some way into 2020. My only question is, might that campaign which they waged ahead of the release of the report, or even a lot of the work that went into the BBI, might that have influenced the final output we got? Might the meeting in Bomas 1, and the comments made by, for example, the Deputy President, the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, and maybe one or two other players, might that have influenced what we ended up with? And it seems, yes, that there was some influence. Then the Deputy President's position evolved over time. He came from, this is a beast, we are being misled, we are being taken down the path of people sharing positions. It was suspected that this is President Uhuru Kenyatta's way of hanging on to power. When the report came closer and closer into the public domain, I think there was a realization that this beast may not be a beast after all. We need to look at it before we take a position. And he then said, yes, but in Bomas 2, you remember. He said, yeah, this is a good thing. However, let's look at 1, 2, 3. Position was evolving. Finally, he said, and he didn't say, he said in a funeral somewhere in Nandi County that, you know what, pass this thing, farm your land, get busy with your economic pursuits, pass this thing if you must. And I think a lot of the people who like and support the Deputy President have never evolved with him. And they remain in the stringent position of no to BBI. BBI is a demon, forgetting that the Deputy President himself, his position has evolved to a situation where, as a minimum, he's indifferent to it.
Okay, that's interesting. Daktari, your take on this. Politics will definitely play a key role in the way BBI plays out. Is it a slippery path come 2022 for any of the contenders, including DP Ruto?
I think before I get there, I want to comment on the voting patterns in the National Assembly last week, whereby the BBI bill was given a go-ahead by the National Assembly. If you look at the numbers, I think the numbers which said no were between around 75, 80 or thereabout. And
80. That was no.
Those are the no, about 75.
The number.
The other, the no were about 75, 80.
Yeah.
And the no's about 240.
The yes.
The yeses are about 240. And within the yes, there were a bit watermelons, a few watermelons. Within the no, there were also a bit of watermelons. Because all these things, to a large extent, people are voting based on their 2022 prospects,
Okay.
and also trying to accommodate their respective party positions. But however, the people who voted no are being associated with deputy president. So you look at 80 associated with one person, then 240 associated with Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula, and Kalonzo Musyoka. You can see that the share of the 40 per individual may not be that big. So it would not be fair for us to say that the deputy president has been flawed. In fact, he could be the winner because he can say these 80 were actually for me, people are for me, and they can go with me all the time. Finally, there's this group of 140 MPs which met with the deputy president some time ago in his residence, the House of Residence. If you want to know their clear position on this, is if there were an impeachment motion against the deputy president. The way they would vote would tell you whether they are seriously for him or against him. But for this particular issue, I think it is too fluid, but the DP still seems to have some weight. In terms of impact reflection on 2022, it is now, and I still insist, it is now up to around December when the real positions are going to define themselves, when the real leaders are going to emerge in this process. Remember, the first time the deputy president defined himself is when he led the no campaign. That's when the no got about 20%, the yes got 80%. But he was still clearly noticeable. So if Orengo, for example, decides from nowhere, I'm not going to support this thing, I don't see why they cannot team up with the deputy president. I remember sometimes, because I want Kioko say that Orengo cannot be suspected to be opposing the deputy, to be siding with the deputy president. I remember sometimes ago, Orengo is on record saying that anybody else other than Raila Odinga cannot challenge the deputy president. So if they fall out with the kingpin of ODM, that's Raila Odinga, where else do you expect him to go? He's going to negotiate and team up with the other side of the team.
All right.
And in his own backyard, Ugenya, is where my friend David Ochieng won a parliamentary seat against the ODM wave. So what I'm saying is some people are going to say no to the referendum for the purpose of defining themselves and being noticed and positioning themselves.
Okay.
Others are going to say yes for the same purpose, but you're going to have leadership clearly defined by December, actually after the referendum, on how 2022 is going to happen. This is a clear reflection. It's going to define how we are going to move in 2022.
Okay, so it's all about possibilities. Let's see how it plays out. But as you give us your take, Joseph Kioko, we saw the Leader of Majority and Junet Mohammed hold a press conference right after that National Assembly vote and sort of hint that if some people continue not doing the party lines, I mean, these numbers can be used for other things, including the possibilities of an impeachment here or there. With the time right now, the strict timelines, is this a possibility in your take?
Well, if that possibility of impeaching Ruto, vote of no confidence against Ruto, was ever there, they would have exercised it a long time ago.
Okay.
They didn't need to wait for this. I think that's clear. And that's the ultra-loyalists around President Uhuru and Raila who make this thing look bad. The way they're handling it, and especially every time Junet Mohammed opens his mouth, there's a lot of disgust that comes out of it, really. And I'm sorry, that has gone a little bit personal, really. That's not fair. But it is important to understand that after the signature collection, after President Uhuru met MCAs of Central Province and promised MCAs 2 million, this thing was cast. There was no county assembly that was going to say no to the proposals that an MCA can be a member of the county executive, can be a minister, that there'll be a ward development fund, that there are certain goodies that went to the counties that when the president topped it up with a 2 million grant, then the struggle against this document ended there and then. And that is what I believe DP Ruto knew and decided not to get into this fight. The role of Parliament thereafter is very ceremonial. Whether they say yes, whether they say no, this document proceeds to the President in its raw form. The President sends it to IEBC, IEBC follows Article 49 of the Election Act of 2011 in terms of defining the the referendum questions, the symbols, and the thing goes to a referendum. So parliamentary role, apart from flexing and a talk shop, they had no role whatsoever in this particular manner. They can't change a comma. They can't. So DP Ruto, in his wisdom, avoided this thing. From that meeting of Sagana, if we all look back sincerely and look at it, the conversations about BBI on his part have been win-win. We don't want a contested referendum because an uncontested referendum has no political significance to Raila, to Kalonzo, to the ODM brigade.
Okay.
A contested referendum has a multiplier effect of galvanizing support base and can give you a good push as you go to the 2022. So DP Ruto has played this thing very well. He has avoided it. Whatever you want to pass, you pass it. I'm also a Kenyan. I will benefit. You won't create the position of prime minister, and when I'm president, you say, since you didn't support, you won't enjoy it. He might lose the election, but come with majority of MPs to negotiate himself into office as a prime minister. So whichever way, I think the guy has played it well. Those who are reading into it, is just that they want a contest. They want to draw out DP Ruto into this contest, and the guy has been bright enough not to be engaged in this confrontation.
Okay, well noted. Thank you so much, Joseph Kioko, political analyst, for your input. We'll get to see how the Senate votes this time round come Tuesday, when they'll be resuming their sitting, and definitely as we anticipate those legal issues facing the BBI Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020 to be sorted out in order for this to be rolled out successfully. Arthur Odera, many thanks for your input. Former Teso North Member of Parliament, as well as Njogu Barua. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Daktari is a former Gishugu Member of Parliament. Of course, we'll get to observe how this all plays out. Allow us to take a short break.